what people aren't familiar with, what they're not comfortable with, tends to scare them. And with, even if you're not scared, it's just resistant to change. So saying, I'm comfortable, I understand what I do now. I understand. And in this case, what I wrote about was streaming platforms. So different streaming services now competing not only against each other, but against traditional cable, and changing the way that consumers, watch live television, watch movies, shows, and trying to put all that into one centralized location. So it's this battle of streaming services versus traditional cable, and looking at this point of inevitability where there's this crossover, right? Well, I guess we termed it point of inevitability. And there's a crossover where the old technology is on the decline, fading out, and it's a point where there's starting to become mass adoption of the newer technology. And there's always going to be those who cling on to the very end. But for the most part, at that, you know, uh, whatever you want to call it, point of inflection, most people take the cue to switch. Now, whether they want to do it or they're forced to do it is to be seen, right? Like one thing I mentioned in the article was they're starting to host Thursday night football games on Amazon Prime. More recently, Major League Baseball struck a deal with Apple Plus to air Friday night games exclusively on Apple Plus. So I was thinking, okay, as a fan who wants to watch these games and follows these teams very closely, it becomes frustrating not to be able to find a way to watch them other than going and purchasing that service. So I thought that was a really good way to incentivize people to shift to their platforms. I mean, one way to do it is create great content, and they can throw, millions and millions of dollars at creating the best content or luring some of the best shows with massive followings. But really, I think that what moves the needle for these streaming services is live television and wrapping everything into one package.
Right.
The other thing we talked about, and it kind of relates to, in our world, picking stocks, right? and how people get comfortable with stocks that they know and are stable and have performed to their what they perceive as well over a period of time. But in this case, we compared Netflix to AT&T, which if you look at the stock charts over the last 10, 15 years of each, Netflix has obviously taken off with their growth over the last 10, 15 years, while AT&T, if you look at it long term, yes, it pays a dividend. And I think put in there, was the dividend really worth it after holding it for that long? But it's in a downtrend over the last 10 years. So a stock that virtually went nowhere, aside from paying you a dividend. And then you have Netflix, which is where all the growth was. So both in our world and in the streaming world, there's always going to be this point of crossover where in our world, it's our responsibility to be aware of this change and adapt when needed.
And I think that's where the interest around crypto comes in. I think AT&T, by the way, going back to that, they have it's DirecTV too, right? So there's they've got a DirecTV.
I
Pretty sure.
believe that's what you're comparing.
Yeah, and that's why I think we have such an interest in crypto is that it's I don't want to say the writing's on the wall, but because there's money flowing to it, we talked about in the last episode, money's flowing there, and young people are going there, and young people tend to pick the winners from a technology standpoint. That we owe it to ourselves, and in turn our clients, to dive into it and understand it. And I think as advisors, we become a little complacent too, right? I mean, we kind of get into our old habits and get comfortable, and while that's not only a disservice to ourselves, I think people should always kind of constantly be learning and whatever they find interesting. But you owe it to your customers or clients or whoever you're working with to be on the forefront of whatever technology is coming our way.